The candles on the cake flickered against the polished walnut table, but the room stayed eerily quiet. Not a single soul had come. Bruce Willis stared at the empty chairs surrounding him in the private dining room of Mateo's in Beverly Hills, a place he'd booked every March 19th since his mid-40s. He'd always insisted on privacy, low lighting, Sinatra on vinyl. But today the quiet wasn't deliberate. It was devastating. He exhaled slowly, rubbing the ring finger on his right hand. The tremor had returned. The early stages of frontotemporal dementia had stripped him of scripts, then sets, then fans. Now it had taken this, the illusion that anyone still cared. The maitre d' poked his head in after 30 minutes of awkward silence. "Mr. Willis, should we wait a little longer for your guests?" Bruce's eyes didn't leave the cake. "No, bring me the check." "Sir, it's all on the house. We're honored, truly." Bruce gave a nod, polite, detached. He reached for the cake knife, but paused mid-air, staring down at the inscription, "Happy 70th, Bruce. Love, Em and the girls." Emma hadn't called, nor had Rumor, Scout, or Tallulah. Not even Mabel or Evelyn. His daughters, his anchor, scattered across the world, too busy or too bitter. He wasn't sure which. He cut a thin slice and took a bite, the chocolate dense against his tongue, and closed his eyes. His memories were fragments now. Car rides down Laurel Canyon, laughter over burnt pancakes, the way Demi used to tap her foot when she was annoyed but trying not to show it. Those things still lived somewhere deep, but like a locked room with the lights off. When he opened his eyes again, a waiter stood there awkwardly with a silver envelope. "This was delivered this morning. We weren't sure when to give it to you." Bruce took it and broke the seal. Inside, a simple white card with elegant handwriting. "You're more than what they remember. Don't forget what you left behind. M." He blinked. M? Was it Mabel? Melanie? Maybe even Michael, his longtime assistant before the diagnosis. But something in the careful penmanship felt familiar. Almost intimate. He placed the card down and stood slowly, his knees stiff from the cold. He pulled on his coat, the same worn navy one he'd had since Die Hard 3. As he stepped outside, the cool LA, air bit against his face. Paparazzi didn't wait for him anymore. No one screamed his name, just a man in a coat stepping into the back seat of a car that no one recognized. "Where to, Mr. Willis?" the driver asked. Bruce hesitated. Brentwood. He was headed home to the quiet house with too many photos and not enough footsteps. But tonight, something else stirred in him. That card, the handwriting, it tugged at him, as though part of his mind still knew how to chase a mystery. As the car pulled away, Bruce watched the city blur through the window. He hadn't spoken to his lawyer in 2 weeks, but he'd sent the revised will. The new clause, the secret no one knew. Not even his daughters. Not even Emma. Just him. And whoever M was. He closed his eyes. For a moment, there was peace, and somewhere across town a young paralegal at Merrill & Cotter opened a file she wasn't supposed to see, and gasped. Inside, an addendum signed just days ago, a name on the beneficiary list that no one could have predicted, a name that would send shockwaves through every person who turned away from Bruce Willis. Want to know what happened next? Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. You won't believe how this story unfolds. The office lights buzzed faintly above Meredith Carter's head as she flipped through the stack of documents. She wasn't supposed to be in this folder. It was flagged private, partner level only. But the curiosity had gotten the better of her, and the initials BW on the label had pulled her in like gravity. She stared at the last page again, fingers trembling slightly. The clause was simple but jarring. "In the event of my death, I bequeath the entirety of the Westwood property, all residual royalties from the Die Hard franchise, and the sum of $2.4 million to Elijah K. Monroe." Meredith squinted at the name. Elijah Monroe? Who the hell was that? She glanced around the empty 28th floor. It was 8:43 p.m. on a Wednesday. Most of the Merrill & Cummers staff had gone home hours ago, but Meredith was only a second-year associate, too ambitious, too broke, and too curious for her own good. She grabbed her phone and typed the name, Elijah K. Monroe, Los Angeles. The results were sparse. A few court mentions, a small obituary for an Eddie Monroe in Pasadena. But one link stood out, a 2001 article from a local paper in Pittsburgh. She clicked. Local foster teen Elijah Monroe awarded community arts grant for film mentorship program. Mentors say the teen reminds them of a young Bruce Willis. Meredith sat back in her chair. Foster teen? Was Bruce his mentor? She stood, grabbing the file and tucking it into her leather tote. The partners would kill her if they knew, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was buried here. Across town, Bruce was back in Brentwood, seated in his leather recliner with a record spinning quietly in the background. Nina Simone's voice cracked through the static. "It's a new dawn, it's a new day." He wasn't sure why he'd done it. He hadn't seen Elijah Monroe in nearly 15 years, not since that last visit to the studio in Burbank, where the kid, just out of rehab, had shown him a short film that felt more honest than anything Bruce had seen in years. No action, no fake heroics, just pain, dignity, and survival. Bruce had pulled him aside after the screening. "Don't lose that edge," he'd said. "It'll get buried." "Buy money, buy applause, protect it." Elijah had nodded, eyes damp. He looked like he'd just been given permission to breathe. But then the years passed. Emails slowed. Elijah changed numbers. Bruce got sick. And the silence settled. Still, when he revised his will that January morning, it was the first name that came to him. Not because of guilt, not because of charity. Because Elijah had seen the real him. Not the action star, not the punchline, just Bruce. And maybe in some twisted way, Bruce had always hoped that if no one else remembered who he was, Elijah might. Meredith's phone buzzed as she walked to her car. A blocked number. "Hello?" The voice was low, male, deliberate. "You looked into the Monroe clause." Her heart stopped. "Who is this?" "You don't need to know that, but if you want to understand what Bruce was really doing, go to the Sunset Motel, room 203, bring the file, come alone." Click. The call ended. Meredith stared at the screen. Her hands were shaking. She opened her bag and looked down at the file again. What the hell had Bruce Willis been planning? The Sunset Motel looked like it hadn't been renovated since the 80s, and not in a charming, nostalgic way. Meredith parked under a dim, flickering sign and took a breath. Her tote with the file rested on the passenger seat. She'd thought about calling someone. Her boss, a friend, even the police. But none of those options made sense. Not yet. She stepped out of the car, clutching the bag, and walked past two vending machines humming by the office. Room 203 was upstairs, second from the end. The hallway smelled like mildew and cigarette smoke. When she reached the door, she knocked once, firmly. A pause, then a voice. "Slide your phone under the door." Meredith hesitated, then did as told. The lock clicked. The door creaked open. Inside, a man in his 40s with a graying buzz cut and narrow eyes stood by the window. He looked military, not recent, but practiced. On the dresser beside him, a laptop, an old Rolodex, and a stack of documents bound in red string. "You're Meredith Carter." "Yes, who are you?" He didn't answer. Instead, he nodded to the bed. "Sit." Reluctantly, she sat. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears. The man pulled up a chair across from her. "I worked with Bruce, not on movies, on everything else." Meredith's brow furrowed. "What does that mean?" "He didn't trust lawyers. Not all the way. He kept backups. People. I was one." He pulled a folder from the red stack and opened it. Elijah Monroe wasn't just some foster kid Bruce helped. He was the reason Bruce almost quit Hollywood in 2002. What happened in 2002? He saw himself in Elijah. Same fire, same anger, same emptiness. Bruce wanted to adopt him. Meredith blinked. Adopt? It was never public. He filed quietly, but the agency turned it down. Too unstable, too much press. Elijah got bounced around. Bruce pulled back. The man's voice softened. He never stopped watching, though, sent money anonymously, paid for film school, checked in when he could. Meredith leaned forward. So, why leave him everything? The man gave her a long look. Because Bruce knew what was coming. The disease, the forgetting. He wanted someone out there to remember the parts of him that mattered. Why not his own family? They knew the version of Bruce the world adored, but Elijah knew the man he was when the cameras were off, the messy, tired, stubborn, scared man. Meredith opened the file on her lap again. He left him the Westwood property, royalties, millions. The man nodded. And a key. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small rusted key on a chain. Safety deposit box, Wilshire Trust Bank. It's under a pseudonym. Meredith's eyes widened. What's in it? I don't know. Bruce didn't tell me. He just said it would explain everything. The room went quiet. Then the man added, You're in this now, Miss Carter. If you open that box, you'll see why Bruce Willis didn't want to be remembered as an actor. Meredith stood slowly, her voice shaking. What if I walk away? Then everything in that file dies with you, and Elijah never knows the truth. She stared at him. Something in his face told her this wasn't theater. She took the key. Outside, the night air felt electric. Her phone was back in her hand, but the signal was dead. She didn't know it yet, but the next morning her face would appear on an internal alert sent across Merrill & Co. Associate Meredith Carter accessed private files without authorization. If seen, do not engage. Report immediately. Meredith had never held anything so cold and small with such significance. The key pressed against her palm as she walked into Wilshire Trust Bank the next morning, hidden under the collar of her trench coat. She hadn't slept. Instead, she'd gone home, packed a duffel bag, and printed a fake letterhead identifying her as the legal representative of one Mr. Carl Brenner, the name on the safe deposit rental. It was risky. If the bank called the firm, she was done. But if what the man at the motel had said was true, this key didn't just unlock a box. It unlocked the truth about one of the most private men in Hollywood. The clerk didn't blink twice. Mr. Brenner's box is in Vault 3, right this way. The room was cold, the walls thick with silence. She signed her name with a flourish and was left alone with the heavy metal drawer. It slid open with a grind. Inside, a worn black notebook, a flash drive, and a single Polaroid photo. She stared. The photo showed Bruce, younger, maybe late 2000s, with a teen who had his arm slung casually over Bruce's shoulder. Dark-skinned, dreadlocked, with an unforced grin. Elijah. The caption on the back, Brooklyn 2007. He made me laugh harder than any script ever did. Meredith set the photo down and opened the notebook. Pages filled with Bruce's handwriting spilled out. Notes, letters, half-formed ideas. But one section was marked by a red paperclip. For Elijah. If you're reading this, it means I couldn't tell you in person. But I want you to know, you were my greatest project. Not in the way Hollywood talks about projects, in the way a father means it. You were the one I didn't get to finish. But I hope this helps build what comes next. Below it, coordinates and a note. Take the drive. Go to the cabin. Tell your story. Back in a one-bedroom apartment in Inglewood, Elijah Monroe sat at a cracked kitchen table, balancing unpaid utility bills and staring at a rejection email from another grant application. He hadn't made a film in 3 years. He didn't know it yet, but 2 blocks away a silver Mercedes with tinted windows had just pulled to a stop. Inside, Meredith Carter was rehearsing what she would say. She knocked. The door opened cautiously. Elijah, older now, tired-eyed, with a small scar above his left brow, looked at her with measured suspicion. "Can I help you?" "My name's Meredith Carter. I work for Merrill & Co. Chief. Or I did. This is about Bruce Willis." He narrowed his eyes. "What about him?" She held out the photo. His fingers trembled slightly as he took it. "I haven't seen this in... Jesus." "There's a box," she said. "A cabin, somewhere in the Sierras, and a message, for you." He stared at her, guarded. "Why now? Why after all this time?" "Because he chose you." she said. Over everyone. Elijah looked like someone had just knocked the wind out of him. Where's the cabin? I have the coordinates. But we can't drive there until the snow clears. A few more days, maybe. He nodded slowly, then, You're coming with me? If you'll let me. He gave a bitter half laugh. Why the hell not? But deep inside, something flickered. A part of him that hadn't felt alive in years. Bruce had left him something. Not just money, not just land. Maybe a second chance. The wheels crunched over frost-bitten gravel as Elijah steered the borrowed SUV up the winding road. Snow still lined the shoulders, glistening under the late morning sun. Meredith sat quietly beside him, holding the notebook in her lap like it might shatter if touched wrong. Neither of them spoke much on the drive. Some things didn't need narrating, not grief, not regret. The cabin sat at the edge of a clearing, surrounded by tall pine and stillness. The wood siding was weathered, but the structure held strong. Elijah stepped out first, boots sinking into the snow. He looked up at the sky and exhaled. This place, he said quietly, was where he took me one weekend, only once. I was 16. We didn't say much. Just chopped wood and made bad coffee. He didn't talk like a movie star, he just let me exist. Meredith followed him up the stairs. The key from the notebook unlocked the front door. Inside, it smelled of cedar and old paper, a fireplace, a dusty couch, shelves lined with books. On the table sat a vintage film projector. Next to it, a box labeled, "To Elijah. Play this, then decide." Elijah lifted the reel with reverence. They threaded the film together. The generator sputtered on. The screen lit up against a white sheet tacked to the wall. Then, Bruce's voice. Not the smooth, winking tone from red carpets. It was slower, hoarser, honest. "Hey, kid," the recording began. "I don't know if I ever got to say this while I still had my words, but I'm proud of you." A beat. "I've made a lot of noise in my life." Explosions, applause, but none of that meant anything compared to watching you make something out of nothing. I saw you walk through hell and still find light. That's art, Elijah. That's what the world needs. Bruce coughed off screen, continued. "This cabin's yours now, so is the money, so is the camera gear in the shed out back. But more than that, I want you to build something. Tell stories no one else will, tell yours and tell mine if you want. Not the movie version, the real one." A long pause. "I wasn't always good at being present, but I saw you, and I remembered." The screen faded to black. Elijah stood still. His eyes glistened, unmoving. Meredith whispered, "He gave you the one thing no one else did. Legacy." He nodded. "Not just that. Permission." He walked to the window and looked out at the trees. The stillness inside him began to move again, not in chaos, but in clarity. "I'm going to start filming here," he said. "No crew, no studio, just truth." Meredith smiled. "You'll need someone to help produce." He turned. "You in?" She laughed softly. "After all this?" I'd follow the script. 3 weeks later, an anonymous upload appeared on YouTube. Black screen, then a voice. "My name is Elijah Monroe. I'm not famous, but I want to tell you about the man who taught me how to remember." The film, Remembering Bruce, went viral within days, not for the celebrity gossip, but for what it revealed. A man, stripped of fame, still reaching for connection, for meaning. Emma and the girls watched it in silence from New York. Demi called Elijah personally to thank him, and Hollywood, the machine that had forgotten Bruce, paused. Not for box office numbers, but for the weight of what he left behind. A legacy of honesty, a map out of the noise, a voice that said, "You matter." And if you made it to the end of this story, maybe that voice was meant for you too. So don't forget it. Subscribe for more stories that matter, and click the video on screen, and it was picked just for you. You're going to love it.